All right, we're live. It's time for the Wednesday night live show, the Panther-Lair Show here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Trying to get my headphones all sorted out here because sometimes I forget that I need to hear what Jim is saying when we welcome him in here in a few minutes. So I'm going to get my headphones untangled and talk to you about youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's our video channel here on YouTube. It's where you're watching this video right now, or maybe you're watching the replay of it. Although the replay is no fun because, I mean, you can still make comments, but we're not going to respond to them. We're not going to talk about them. You might be like watching along and be like, oh, they totally screwed something up. They mispronounced somebody's name. They got a number wrong. They got a record wrong. They got a score wrong. You might type your little comment in there, but we're not going to say anything about it because we only do that during the live stream. So if you're like watching this later in the week, you're like, I need to chime in and tell those guys that they're idiots, or I need to offer my unique and important insight that you can't get from anyone other than me. The time to do it and the place to do it is here on the live stream on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you won't miss anything. And, of course, we have our website, Panther-Lair.com. It's Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting. You get all at Panther-Lair.com. It's the best place to get your Pitt sports news and have your Pitt sports conversation. I was just catching up right before we started on the thread we have going about Pitt baseball. We've got like a 35-page thread on the Pitt baseball season, which, I mean, didn't officially end today with a game against Wake Forest in the ACC tournament. They have another pool game tomorrow. They'll play North Carolina at 3 o'clock. It kind of doesn't matter. They're pretty much eliminated. Well, I mean, Pitt is effectively eliminated. It'll come down to that Wake Forest North Carolina game on Friday. The nightcap there, and the winner of that game will advance to the semifinals from this pool that Pitt is in with North Carolina and Wake Forest. Well, actually, I want to talk to Jim about Pitt baseball here in a minute, so we won't get too far in that conversation. But my point is, I was reading on Panther-Lair.com about the game today. Nice long thread going there about the season. So even if you're whether you're into Pitt football, basketball, recruiting, baseball, wrestling, and we have a lot of coverage, a lot of conversation on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Let's bring in Jim because I want to talk to him about this sweet hat. Jim, do you see my sweet hat?
I can't make out. Oh, it's.
I mean, just do you see it? Do you like it? Do you like the general look of it? Even if you can't read the words, I mean, do you? It's a nice hat, right?
It's a pretty nice hat, yeah. Where could I get one like that?
That's a good question. It's actually Backshore Apparel. Our good friend Mike, huge Pitt fan, Pitt supporter. He's a member of Alliance 412. He's a member of Panther-Lair.com, where he's actually been getting a lot of support from Pitt fans. And he actually asked me, he was like, Chris, can you tell the Panther-Lair people, like, major shout out to them? Because the Panther-Lair subscribers have been supporting him a lot. Backshore is like, it's like beach tech, Jim, with like these hats. I mean, if you look at, you see, it's not your standard, like, I mean, they call it like a modern take on a trucker hat. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you can see how this would be like the perfect hat to wear. Do you golf?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I don't golf, but I like the beach. And you can see how this could be the perfect hat for like the beach or golfing. It's super comfortable. It breathes nice. It's a snapback, which I appreciate. Everything is fitted hats these days, or those stupid straps that you have to adjust. This is nice and easy. And it's just a great hat. And they've got great tech. It's really like tech that goes into their products in terms of how they're designed and how they're made. I don't mean tech that it's like AI or it's going to read your brain or anything, but they're innovative. They're laser cut hats, moisture wicking fabrics. It's lightweight. They're breathable. They're durable. You know what they even cite is their unique floating feature. So if the hat falls off in the ocean, because if you're like me and there's some really thinning spots of hair on your head and you're worried about sunburning your head, you wear a hat at the beach, and even when you get in the water, well, this hat's going to float on the water. They also have Beach Tech hoodies. It's a great combination of style and functionality, flex fabrics that keep you cool and shielded from harmful sun rays. And here's the best part, Jim. You go to backshoreapparel.com, use the promo code PITT10, that's PITT10. You get 10% off on your order. So are you going to the beach this summer, Jim?
Yeah, I'm going to New Jersey in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, so you're going to be out in the sun. You're going to be trying to get away from your computer and the official visits and all of that. You're going to try and enjoy the beach, but you don't want to get a sunburn. I mean, look at that dome, Jim. I mean, you don't have a lot of hair protecting it by choice. You don't have a lot of hair protecting the dome there. You might need a nice hat like from Backshort. I recommend it. They're really nice. They're really comfortable. So shout out to Mike, good Pitt fan, good member of Panther-Lair.com, friend of the program. And shout out to his products. So everybody should go check it out. Backshoreapparel.com. Jim, I got something I have to tell you. And I don't know if you saw it was in the thread. You know how occasionally we'll get that thumbs up that appears on the screen?
Yes.
Do you know why that happens?
No.
NG Standish on the message boards. So what's been happening is during Morning Pit twice this week, balloons will just appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's the weirdest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I had to go back and watch the video after, because when it happens, I'm like, I don't know if other people are actually going to see this. So I don't want to start talking about balloons. And people are like, what are you talking about balloons? There's nothing on the screen. Chris is losing it. So anyway, I talked about this, and NG Standish pointed out it's something, and this is something you're going to be able to try. It's actually something with Macs where they recognize gestures. So if I do this.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Okay.
How about that?
This goes like 2 thumbs up. You see that?
Wow.
Okay. 2 thumbs down. Things don't go so hot. It's a rainstorm. All right. There's this one, which is funny. Do you see that, Jim?
I did. So what's balloons?
Do you want the balloons was, did I already do 2 thumbs up? Oh, a peace sign.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
See? But the best one. All right. Are you ready for this? This is awesome. The laser show.
That is pretty cool.
I did it like after NG Standish pointed this out, and I tested it a little bit. First, I showed my kids, and they loved it. They thought it was the greatest thing they've ever seen, because they couldn't understand. I showed them the balloons earlier in the week. They couldn't understand it at all. They were like, "Dad, why are you doing that?" I'm like, "I didn't choose to do it." But then I showed them that, and they just think it's the greatest thing. And so I did it all throughout the Morning Pit that I recorded for tomorrow. It's all, there's laser. I ended on a laser show, like Panther-Lair.com. It was incredible. So you have that next time you're on a Zoom. If we're on you know what you should do? The ACC Zoom basketball teleconference.
Yeah,
you should drop some like lasers and stuff in there. You know,
yeah,
that would be awesome. Like I think
I don't know if Andy will appreciate that, but we'll see. Actually, he probably would. I mean, it's kind of a boring thing.
Yeah, pass it on to the Clemson and Florida State guys. They're allowed to do anything they want. I think if they want to send lasers all over the place, and I mean, it's not really going to change anything. It's just dude with lasers. I mean, who's going to hate that? You know, I can't see anyone's going to dislike it. Quick question here. Fred Thompson says Pitt basketball picked 7th in the ACC. Have you seen some sort of Fred? You're going to have to elaborate on where this. So I mean, it's obviously not an official preseason poll. He'll have to elaborate on where he saw that. But I mean, there's a question for you. I assume your knowledge of the other 17 teams in the conference.
17 now.
18 basketball teams, right?
18.
So I don't know how much of your knowledge of the other 17 teams is, but what would be your first guess, your May 22nd guess on Pitt's spot in the preseason basketball poll?
I think probably that 5 to 7 range is probably fair, at least for a preseason pick. I mean, they finished 5th 2 years ago, 4th this past season, so they've kind of been in that range for a couple of years now, and I don't think they got significantly worse. It's just I don't know. I don't know where the ACC is right now. So yeah, 5 to 7 feels right. Yeah.
I mean, I would more or less agree with that without knowing much about what other teams have. It's funny. I mean, there's more optimism about this team right now than either of the last 2 off seasons, right? And I think we've talked about this before, probably. But neither of the last 2 off seasons had this kind of optimism. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year there was good vibes around the program just because they finally had a breakthrough season. They had some 4-star recruits, things like that. But we didn't know Bob was Bob. We didn't know Jalen Lowe was as good as he was. I mean, there was excitement, but not, I think right now, I think you can look at that lineup and you could, you see it all the time on Twitter, on our message boards, like who's going to start next year? And that's actually a legitimate question. There's like 7 or 8 guys that are kind of viable in that role. So I think that makes it exciting. It's like, yeah, we have all these guys. Let's, we could do this, we could do that. And I think Pitt fans are generally excited about that.
What, I mean, we'll talk about this a million times, but because there is a debate about the starting lineup right now. I mean, Lowe, Leggett, and Corn are locked in, right? I mean, you have any questions about those 3 guys?
I mean, I could see a world wherever they do like the Ish Leggett 6-man thing again. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's kind of between him and Dunn how they do that. But I guess that's kind of the debate right now. I mean, Zach Austin has a case to start. Delalich has a chance. Guillermo, Corn. I mean, they can go so many different ways. They could go big. They can go athletic. They could go guard heavy. I mean, there's a lot of different ways they can slice it. And I mean, yeah, who starts is one, a debate that everyone always has, but it's like each game can dictate a different thing. And I think they have the type of lineups that they can kind of adapt to who they're playing. And that should be a benefit.
I wonder what kind of conversations they had with Damian Dunn about what his role will be. I wonder if he is coming in and they're saying, look, we're going to start Jalen. We believe Ish is going to probably battle and probably win the starting job. We like Zach as a starter, but there's still an opportunity for you to get like 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like or if it's just generic, we think you can compete for a starting spot. Because like I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them start Lowe, Leggett, Austin, Corrin, and either Guillermo or Delalich at the 4. And then first media timeout, Dunn is in. You know what I mean? And they're going with 3 guards. And Austin's out. And Austin's minutes look like they looked for the better part of, I would say, January, February last year, where the 3-guard lineup became such a primary dominant usage. And Zach Austin's minutes went down as a result. Do you remember him playing much at the 4 at all last year? Like when they went to 3 guards, I don't have many memories, and I could go back through notes, I guess, but I don't have a lot of memory of him being on the court with 3 guards, unless they were doing some really weird small lineup with Hinton at the 5.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to have been like a situation like that or foul trouble or something along those lines. But I don't think he ever really fit in with that lineup. So, I mean, I'm sure he can. But yeah, it's different. He needed to shoot the ball with more confidence last year. And I think that's what kept him off the court. And I think towards the end of the season, he was doing that a little bit. So, maybe he can carry that over into next season and kind of fit in with those kind of lineups.
And Leggett was playing so well that if it came down to, because the other part of it too, and I was thinking about this as I was posting on the boards today about like, Austin never really played the 4. I mean, part of it was he was blocked by Blake Hinson. I mean, there weren't a lot of minutes to go around for another guy to play. It might not necessarily be that Austin couldn't play the 4. It's just that, what are you going to do? Are you going to bench Blake Hinson to give Zach Austin minutes at the 4? And then at the same time, Ishmael Leggett was playing so well. Like somebody had to get squeezed. You weren't taking Carrington off the court. You weren't taking Lowe off the court. Leggett was earning all of the minutes that he could get. Hinson's Hinson. So somebody had to lose minutes at some point among the 1 through 4, and it was Zach. It was the least productive guy. And so if he ends up being the least productive guy again, whether behind, I would assume he'll be less productive than Lowe and Leggett. Out of Dunn, Delalich, Guillermo, is he more productive than 1, 2, or 3 of those guys?
None, I don't think. I mean, I
okay.
think, yeah, I think you're getting more.
So if that's the case, I mean, are we looking at Zach Austin potentially coming off the bench?
I think so. I mean, I think that's a realistic possibility. But I mean, yeah, going back to like that Dunn conversation. I mean, I guess you could kind of use that as a recruiting tool, like Nike Sabandi winning 6th man of the year. I mean, back-to-back years, he had Leggett do it last year. So you could kind of sell guys on like, there's this role we have where you're going to play a lot of minutes and kind of be a starter anyway. So I wonder if that was something they kind of lured Dunn into, because obviously he was a great scorer, at Temple. Then he went to Houston, and it's not like he was bad. It was just like he joined one of the top 3 teams in the country, and they had like 8 guys. So, I mean, I think he's looking for that bigger role, and I'm sure that's, one of the things Pitt promised him.
Yeah, that's it's interesting to you wonder about those conversations. I mean, you'd like to think it's as simple as saying like, don't worry about who starts. Like, look at the minutes. Like, who was contributing more to this team in February and March last year? Ishmael Leggett, who came off the bench, or Zach Austin, who started? And the answer is Austin. So, I mean, a starting lineup of like the three guards, Guillermo and Corin. I mean, I could probably be down with that. I think there's a gap, though. I think you have a gap of like guy, defending guys who are like 6'5" to 6'7". And I'm not sure if you have a good option for defending that, like a wing. You know what I mean? If a team has a Zach Austin type, I think if you go with the three guards, Guillermo and Corin, or even the three guards and Delalic, I mean, I'm not really sure. It seems like as Pitt fans have run out of oxygen talking about how good Delalic is scoring, they've turned to now talking about his defense and having questions about his defense. So I'm not sure if he's a good defensive option there. That might be the one usefulness that Zach Austin can use to keep himself on the court is defending guys in that, like I say, like 6'5" to 6'7", 6'4" to 6'7" range. You know what I mean? Because I think he's pretty good at that. And I think he could probably get even better. But maybe that's what keeps him in. If you feel good enough about the scoring from Lowe, Leggett, the four, and Corin, maybe you can go defensive unless Zach Austin blows up as an offensive guy.
I mean, you can employ him different ways. And I mean, I think last year, whenever they brought him in, I think the vision, like I even asked Capel about it and he kind of like downplayed it. I was like, because he always talked very highly of Leaky Black from North Carolina, who was just like, shot threes in the corner, played defense. And I think that's what they wanted him to be. And I think it took him a while to kind of adjust to like playing at the ACC level because he defended a lot of fours, playing smaller college basketball. And they wanted him to, go take on their small forward or their top scorer. And I don't think he was as comfortable, but I think he got better at it over time. But it's interesting. But I did kind of want to talk about Delalic because I think last week he was not committed at this point. We were I think we were doing the introduction. I think we just learned this guy's, about 1 week ago, we just found out who this guy even was. And now all of a sudden he's committed. So it was an interesting week, I would say.
Yeah. So what do you think about him? What are your thoughts? I mean, you were pretty excited about him last week. Has that gone down at all this week?
Not really. I mean, I think he can score. I mean, I think he can do a lot of good things for this team. And if defense is a question, I mean, that happens. I mean, defense was a question for Blake Hinson at times too.
Right.
So, I mean, I think he can get away with it. But the more I watched his, highlights or whatever it is, and kind of had a appreciation for what he can do and who he's playing against. I mean, I think it's a really good addition. I talked to him. Like we talked over Instagram Messenger. That was, I think, the first time I ever did an interview over that.
Like audio?
Yeah.
Like you made a call.
Because he has like
Instagram.
he had an international phone number. He's like, I don't know if this will work. I don't know. It works. So, he was really excited about Pitt. I mean, I was surprised at like how well he spoke. I mean, his English was really good. So I think that can almost be a benefit because there's not going to be any like, miscommunication. I think he's going to be able to kind of understand the team and just kind of jump right in. So I think that should only help him. And of course, being 21 would help too.
Yeah, there's not a lot of downside to that. It's just so intriguing because it looks so effortless. He looks so smooth. He looks like such a good scorer. And like there are smart people, there are smart basketball people on our message board. I mean, I think you would agree. I mean, when one of them, 13-9 backed up something you had said, it was like a badge of honor for you.
Like, all right.
You were bragging about it in our Panther-Lair group chat. You're like, dude, 13-9 shouted me out, or like 13-9 confirmed what I said. I mean, and you're right. I'm not even making fun of you for that. But it's, there are smart people there, and they're all like sort of saying like, wait, this dude might be like legit. Steven Gertz, our guy, did his film breakdown and was like, I don't know how Pitt got this guy. I mean, is it possible that this actually could like pan out to be like holy crap, they got this big, great shooting European dude who's going to come in here and light it up in college basketball for 1 year. I mean, there are people who are smarter than me who seem to think, yeah, that's a real possibility. Which
Yeah,
is kind of wild.
it is kind of wild. And like, obviously being attached to Rivals, we look at, recruiting rankings. He doesn't have one, but he technically is a freshman. Like he technically has 4 years of eligibility. So when you stack him up against his peers, I mean, like this guy was playing against guys like, Nike Sabanti and like Nelly Cummings. Like that's who he was playing, and he was averaging 14 points a game against them. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that the equivalent of a top 50 guy, a top 30 guy? I don't know. It seems like it.
Feels like it. I mean, it's like Steven Adams was like appeared out of nowhere, all of a sudden became a 5-star, and was a Pitt. And it was like, oh look, Pitt recruited a 5-star guy. Who knew?
Mm-hmm.
Who had any idea about that? And it sort of feels like this, and maybe so. I mean, there's I guess this Pitt basketball being picked 7th. I guess it was a power ranking on 247 or something like that. How much are they really looking into Amsel Delalich, and how much are they thinking about what impact he's going to make as a freshman and what he can do? This might be like a sneaky weapon that, he'll come out and drop 40 in one of the first 2 like non-conference games. And then we'll hear about that game every game for the rest of the season. Just like we heard about Bub Carrington's triple double the rest of the way. Anthony Tennyson says, coach is finally going to have to go 8 to 10 deep. So we always talk about going like 8 to 10 deep. We talk about it in like October and November, sometimes into December when they're still going 8 to 10 deep. And then by the time they get to February, it's like 6, maybe 7. With this year, low, I don't want to keep my hands in front of the screen too long lest I set off a, some sort of display or whatnot. I think we went through all of them. We did the thumbs down and all that stuff. But anyway, Low-Leggett, Dunn, Cummings, right? Probably going to play. Mm-hmm. I think we would include Brandon Cummings in that group, right? I mean, he's not going to redshirt. Yeah. So those 4, Austin, Delalich, Guillermo, Corin at a minimum. And then you're going to need another center. This is Papaconti, right? And then they're not going to keep Jorge off the court.
Yeah.
Unless he's hurt, he's going to play. That's 10 guys. Let's see if 10 has a... It's not doing anything. Oh, it's got to be up. Doesn't always work.
Yeah, it's temperamental.
But anyway, that's 10 guys, right? Come on. There it is. 10 guys. Are they really going to do it? I mean, do you think they're not going to go 10 deep, right? So who gets the cut? Who loses minutes there out of those 10?
Probably the last 2 you mentioned, probably Papaconte and probably Jorge. I mean, I think they're and even if, late in the season, maybe Brandon Cummings, his minutes get pinched a little bit. I mean, I guess it kind of depends how he plays, but yeah, he's never going to go 10 deep late into the season. I mean, like, I think you could do that in the non-conference schedule. I think you could, maybe in the early stages of ACC play, but when push comes to shove, whenever you're trying to make your run, I mean, you want your guys on the court. Like, you want Jalen Lowe out there for 35 minutes. You probably want Ish Leggett doing the same thing. So all of a sudden, there's not as many minutes available. So, I mean, it might be 10 to start the year, but kind of how it always goes, it just condenses slowly.
But I mean, you went to Conti and Jorge, and okay, that's cool. So I mean, you pinch their minutes. Now you're looking at 4 guys to play 3 spots for an entire game. Which, I mean, I guess to be fair, last year they had 4 guys to play 3 spots for an entire game, right? Well, no, because like I was thinking Austin, Hinson, Guillermo, and Federico. But then they went to like the 3 guards. So it was really just 4 guys for 2 spots, basically. Mm-hmm. And I guess that would be the same thing here is, you could pinch minutes on Jorge. You could even, cut some of the minutes on Papaconti and have Guillermo play more 5 if you end up going with more 3-guard lineups and maybe if Austin plays the 4. But like, I mean, it sure looks like they've got a full, like, I mean, if nothing else, they'll be able to practice against 5 guys, right? I mean, they'll have a legit 5-on-5 practice, but I don't know. It's tougher to project this year than it was last year, because I don't think we were sitting there saying like, well, Michael Hewitt and Marlon Barnes and Papaconti are going to fill out this rotation and they're going to go 11 deep. I don't think we were quite talking about that, but I think these guys, it feels, for one thing, you're relying far less on freshmen. It feels like there's more, I don't know. more possibility. Pitt Chag says, I would definitely rock with the 3-guard lineup, Low, Leggett, Dunn, Guillermo, and Corin. I would too. I mean, I think that lineup will score. You know, I think you're going to get good drives out of Low and Leggett. I don't know Dunn's game all that well. Jeff Capel described him as a lot of his descriptions were comparisons to Jamarius Burton. You know, bigger guard, physical guard, good defender, and a guy, you know, good pull-up shooter, a guy who can find his shot and make jump shots. So I guess that, you know, there's that. But Low and Leggett can drive, they can pull up, they can shoot. Guillermo can shoot. Corn's a strong offensive guy. I think they score in a lot of ways with that lineup. And then you bring Delalich in somewhere in there, and you're even more potent offensively. Low, Leggett, Dunn, Guillermo, Corin. Do you lose something rebounding wise? Maybe. I mean, Leggett's such a good rebounder. I think Corin's going to do really well.
I don't know if you have a great 3-point shooter with that lineup. Like percentage wise, your best 3-point shooter in that lineup might be Guillermo.
Yeah, he's a 40% 3-point shooter. I think Pitt Chag hates when people mention that stat because he's a 40% 3-point shooter as a stretch 5. Is he going to be a 40% 3-point shooter as a power forward, which I understand, but I'm pretty sure he can be a 40% 3-point shooter if you throw him the ball standing outside the 3-point line. So I feel like he can do it. You're right, but I think Low and Leggett are dangerous enough. You know, they can at least like draw attention out and drop it down low. And then I think Corin can have some gravitational pull to get open looks for guys outside. But who's the best 3-point shooter on this team? Is it Delalich?
I think so. Probably like him and Guillermo. I mean, I think like the Dunn Burton comparisons are definitely legitimate, but I mean, he is a better 3-point shooter. I mean, I think there'd be some games where Burton would never even look at a 3-pointer. So, I mean, I think he is at least a threat. So they have a lot of guys that can make shots. I don't know if they have a lot of knockdown shooters, but they have a lot of guys that are at least threats that can knock them down, you know, a couple here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's not that one guy, but there's a group who can shoot. Tommy Graham says Low, Dunn, Delalich, Guillermo, Corin. I don't know. Somebody told me that Ishmael Leggett is going to be very, very difficult to keep out of the starting lineup this year. That he has no interest in repeating as 6th man of the year in the ACC. So I guess it comes down to a question of whether Dunn and Leggett are both too good to keep out of the starting lineup. Whether the staff likes to bring one of those guys off the bench like they did with Leggett this past year. Or whether Austin or Delalich are just too good to keep out of the lineup. I don't know. There's a lot of
good problem to have. As they say.
So what did you say? Did you have a gun to your head starting 5? What was it?
I don't. I didn't have that gun to my head.
All right. Well, you do now. I wonder if there's a.
Yeah, I don't know. They probably cut that one out.
Yeah.
I would say Low, Leggett, Delalich, Guillermo, Corin.
Okay.
A little bit bigger.
I like it. Pitt Chag appreciates that I've noticed his general opposition to Guillermo at the 4. Sorry, man. It's just I just feel like you're fighting a losing battle. Hey, here's the other thing with Guillermo at the 4, okay? If you keep him just as a stretch 5 and he rotates with Corin, who plays the 4? Are we then like saying that Delalich and Austin? Is that what we're doing? We're doing 3-guard lineups and Zach Austin's making a full-time move to the 4? Like, I think if you don't move, if Guillermo's not the 4, I just don't know. I guess Jorge could be in the mix there. But I don't think any of those guys are better options than him. I think he's the best option there. Right? I mean, do you have any other good options?
I mean, from a starter standpoint, I mean, I guess you could kind of do what you've been doing and kind of just put Delalich into that Hinson role and kind of do that thing. I mean, like play a more offensive-minded approach and have a scoring threat from the 4 that can handle it a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you could go that route, but I mean, I think they're more than likely going to go with Guillermo. But again, I think they can find their rhythm like how they did this year. I mean, Jalen Lowe didn't start at the beginning of the year, but they kind of found something and went with it. So I think this roster kind of allows you to kind of do something like that.
I like that you were like talking about like Guillermo playing the 4, and you're like, or you could go with a more offensive minded line. Like Guillermo is the offensive minded line. You know what I mean? Like last year it was like, if you want offense, you put Guillermo out. If you want
tempo
defense,
minded lineup.
He'd be more of an offense minded lineup. But it's funny to think of Guillermo as not the offensive minded guy, because he's certainly not the defensive minded guy.
I was thinking like more like, you're going to play a little bit slower if you have 2 6'11" guys out there is kind of more my thought. I mean, I think Delalic, you can play with a faster tempo.
Yeah. I wonder how Corrin runs the court. You know, I don't have strong memory of him doing that, you know, in that game against Pitt. I think Guillermo can get up and down pretty well for a guy his size. I don't know how Delalic's speed is. I don't know how Corrin really runs. But then I think you've got low-legged Dunn, who can finish in transition and can play in transition. So maybe it's just the guards. The guards get out and go. Pitchag says his ideal lineup is low-legged Austin, Delalic, and corner Guillermo. Yeah, I know, because he just wants Guillermo to play the 5. So, you know what, man? Guillermo is going to be a 4. It's raining on his hopes. We'll give Pitchag one other question, though, that he asked you right off the bat. Jim, how was String Cheese Incident this week? Now, for those who might not be so inclined, String Cheese Incident, a bluegrassy jam band from Colorado, has been around for like 25 years or something like that. They did play in Pittsburgh this week, right?
Last night I was there.
Last night. How was it?
Good. That was like, I think it was their first Pittsburgh show in 9 years or something.
Wow.
So, yeah, they sounded good, and it was kind of such a diverse crowd on the North Shore, because there was like Troy Polamalu's like Steelers, some sort of benefit game. So you have that crowd, then you have a Pirates crowd, then you have the String Cheese crowd, and that's more than just the average jam band crowd, I would say. I mean, that's pretty intense, and
it's extra crunchy.
Yeah, that's like anytime I go to one of those shows, like I end up with like someone with very dirty, smelly dreadlocks right in front of me, and it's just a very pleasant smell to enjoy the music. But no, great show.
There were a lot of smells you could have gone with there, and I wasn't sure which one you were like BO or drugs or patchouli. There were a lot of things you could have said, but
the smelly hair right in your face whenever they're dancing too. So yeah,
it was fun back in like 1998, but it's been a long time since then. Anthony Tennyson says, as far as Pitt basketball in the lineup, it's going to come down to the feel for Jeff Capel on who's going to play the most minutes from the bench guys. Yeah, I mean, it'll be a feel. We've seen him ride the hot hand, right? I don't think there have been too many times where we're like, boy, that was a curious substitution decision, other than staying with guys, maybe keeping guys in too long, or we're like, wait, how are you still not subbing this guy out? But I don't think there are too many, like, there aren't a lot of like Andre Powell, Vincent Davis decisions on the basketball equivalent. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking over the past 6 years of Jeff Capel, I don't think he was never not playing the right people. It's just sometimes he didn't have a talented enough roster. But even these past 2 years when they were good, I can't think of many games where it's like, huh? Like, what was he doing? Like, I mean, because usually it's kind of like those 5 or 6 guys anyway. So
that's the thing. Yeah, it's not like there are a ton of options just waiting on the bench that he's ignoring. Like, he's not like passing over Izzy Abanikanda to put Vincent Davis in. But yeah, you're right. I mean, most years he was playing the right people. They weren't the right people, but they were the right people that he actually had access to, and so he had to go with it. But yeah, I think he's got a good feel for those things, even if he largely does typically default to just not going to take anybody out.
What about Nate Santos?
What about him?
Did he ever deserve more playing time than he got?
Yeah, he deserved more shots. He never shot. They never gave him the ball. I mean, like 2 years ago, I remember him standing in the corner by himself. It's like, pass Nate Santos the ball. The one thing this guy is supposed to be able to do is shoot threes. And he's standing in the corner. Will somebody pass it to him and at least find out if he can shoot threes? And they never did. So
there's our one.
Yeah. Yeah. Why didn't you play Nate Santos more? Didn't Chris Payton end up having a good year this year?
Yeah, I forgot about that name. Where did he even go?
I forget. There was a random, like, maybe in our group chat, he went to Kent State. I think he might have like made a Sports Center top 10 or something for,
okay.
yeah, averaged 12.6 points per game.
Good for him.
Started 20 games, team leading rebounder at 7.4 rebounds per game, and leader in blocks, 1.1 blocks. He was a preseason All-MAC player. He had a double-double. He had 25 and 17 against James Madison. He had 18 double-digit games, 4 games with 10-plus rebounds. Chris
Not
Payton.
bad. Yeah. I mean, he couldn't even get on the floor here, but
he played 13 games at Pitt and scored 10 points.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. He's got to be out of eligibility. He went to junior college for 2 years.
Yeah, I remember whenever they signed him, I was like trying to track down how to talk to him.
Yeah.
Going through all the
I remember that. I wonder though,
coaches.
I wonder if he gets an extra year because the COVID year he was in junior college.
Yeah, he would have been around at that time, and I think that did apply to junior college kids as well.
This might have been his extra year because this would be his 5th season. The 2 years of JUCO, 1 year at Pitt, and then this was his 2nd season at Kent State. So good for him for finishing on a high note, presumably. Chris Payton. Don't know how we ended up talking about that. Pitchag says he's seeing string cheese incident at Red Rocks. So that'll be fun. You have a My Morning Jacket shirt on. It's making me bummed out because it doesn't seem like they're playing in Pittsburgh this year. And I don't know why. But
no, I don't think. I think Philly is the close one.
They keep announcing summer dates, and Pittsburgh's not one of them. But alas, we won't talk about that. Switching around a little bit, ACC approved the settlement in the House case. You saw this news, I'm sure. This means that they're moving forward. And I think the Big 12, the ACC have done it. I'm not sure if any of the other power conferences have voted to approve yet. They will. The NCAA Board of Governors will. The settlement will ultimately mean that schools will share about $20 to $22 million in revenue per year, in addition to kicking a couple million every year to pay basically for players, student athletes who weren't able to get NIL in the past, and then probably a couple more million in extra scholarships because the NCAA is going to change all the they're going to lift all the scholarship limits basically, and they're just going to set roster limits, effectively killing the concept of a walk-on, unless the school carries fewer than the max scholarships, which is an option that's available. Probably depends on what the cap is. All in all, looking at probably, by projections, about $25 million in the early going annually. Jim, who's got $25 million laying around that they can just, you know what? Let's throw that 25 into the budget. Do you think anybody has that laying around?
If they do, they probably are members of the Big Ten and SEC or trying to be members of that conference. So, I mean, in theory, I think a lot of the things that they proposed competitively make sense, and it might kind of end the craziness of like how the portal is and the pay for play, but it's also going to come with a big price tag for these schools. And, I think Pitt's right on the line of being able to make that work, but I wonder about like the Georgia Techs, the Boston Colleges, Wake Forest, like what are they going to do? Like, where do they fit into this? Because Pitt might have the money to do that every year, but I doubt Boston College does. So it's going to probably lead to some sports being cut. I don't know if they're going to have to adjust Title IX. I mean, as it is, I think you have to have so many sports to be considered Division I, and Pitt is not a big athletic department. I think they have 17 teams. I think the number's 15, 14. So
yeah, I think I read 16, and I think Pitt claims 19 because you start breaking out the men's this, women's that. It kind of bumps the number up, but yeah. But then there's that Division I distinction, and as we move further along here, I mean, you're getting closer to football autonomy. So I don't even know if that Division I distinction. I think it might still matter, but they'll probably change the definition of what that means anyway, because football is going to move away from that element. Football is ultimately going to break off. You know what I mean? Where's the bulk of that $20 million or $22 million in revenue sharing going? It's going where the revenue is made. The revenue is made in football, and the revenue is made in basketball. And I haven't seen this specific of a detail, but I mean, there has to be some kind of prorating, right? You're not going to give a swimming and diving student athlete the same amount that you give the quarterback in revenue sharing, right? And so, I mean, there's got to be some prorating of like, here's the amount of revenue we're saying you actually were worth. And it's got to be based on what your sport brings in, what your contributions were to that team. I mean, it's got to go through like an arbitration process, right? To determine these things. And then you get closer and closer to CBAs, and you get closer and closer to collective bargaining and unions and employment, right? I mean, this is where it's all headed. This still doesn't feel like a destination to me. Does it to you? Does this feel like this settlement comes through, they move into this style of things? It still feels like this is just a step along a path toward actual employment. Is that the impression is that how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of like Ross Dellinger's like initial reports was they are not making them employees, but they left it open that it could get to that at some point. So I think we're on the road to get there. I don't think this is the end all be all, but I think it's a step in the right direction. I think we're going to lose some of the craziness of the NIL stuff. I mean, there will still be some of that, but I don't know if you're just going to get the flat out like, oh my God, we're paying $1 million for a quarterback out of our donor's pocket. I think there's going to be less of that. I think this might ultimately lead to contracts. It's like, okay, you're at Pitt for 2 years because you were making money off of them, and you just can't have this free transfer every year. So I mean, I think that's what people want. I think that's what like schools in Pitt's position want. They want to be able to, have their guys and develop and stuff like that because they can't pay top dollar every year the way some schools can. So if it can kind of bring some sort of semblance of balance that way, I'm all for it. I just don't know if it's doing it right off the bat.
Yeah. Chris is a super chatter. We appreciate him for sure supporting the podcast. Says, I'm afraid Florida State, Clemson, and Carolina are about to destroy the ACC. I pray the Big 12 adds Pitt when the conference implodes. It's a sad day for football. I mean, I think that's still got to be the number one priority. You've got to make sure you have a seat at the big table. Like wherever this goes, whatever it becomes, whatever it's doing, you've got to make sure you can still get that revenue. It gets a lot harder to share $20 or $22 million in revenue when you're not making all that much revenue, which would be the case when, if you end up in a smaller conference, you don't get that, you don't get that revenue check. And so like, I don't know, like that, it has slid, I think, to the back burner a little bit. Every now and then you get some nonsense about Florida State or Clemson to make a little noise. But I'm getting distracted by comments here. I feel like the conference realignment stuff has slid to the back burner behind this other stuff, but it's still really important. And I still don't know where Pitt's going to end up. And I still don't know, is the Big 12, I mean, the best hope, I mean, ideally you get the dream scenario of the Big 10, right? But is the Big 12 their best hope that if those schools leave the ACC, Pitt and a few other ACC schools can get into the Big 12 and hopefully find themselves, a home? Is that the best hope?
I mean, I guess like there's going to be a world where, it's going to be the SEC and Big 10 at one point. It kind of already is. And I don't know, it like keeps shrinking by one. It used to be, 6 BCS conferences, then the Power 5, and now we're calling it the Power 4. I mean, eventually it might just get down to 3. And I mean, Big 12 just looks better than the ACC right now. Maybe it's not, but like at least they were proactive. It seems like they were doing something. So it appears that they're coming from somewhere of strength, I guess. So yeah, I mean, obviously you want to get in one of the 2 main conferences. I don't know if that's ever going to happen for Pitt, but you just want to be in the next one, the one that's the closest to the top, maybe. And so, I mean, right now that is the ACC, but that's probably not going to be the case in about 5 or 6 years. So I don't know. It might be the Big 12.
So Homer Simpson, who often comments here, is now calling himself Homer Simpson is now Pitt and PSU fan. So you can tell where we're going with this conversation. It says, what exactly does Pitt spend their money on? No facilities, no stadium, FCS coaching staff scammers. So, Jim, no facilities, no offices, no weight room, no team meeting room, no outdoor practice fields, no anything. I would find that to be false. Would you? Would you not?
Yeah. And when I go to Oakland, right next to the Peterson Event Center, there's this brand new thing being built right next to it too.
A big hole in the ground. And then, of course, there's salaries, whether it's coaches or administrative, all these sports teams, they all recruit, they have to travel. I think travel budgets are probably a lot more than people realize. Uniforms and all this, like what does Pitt spend its money on? Sir, I'm sorry, but that's a stupid question. I'm thumbs downing you. Come on. Why wouldn't it work?
Is it 2 thumbs?
Nope, there it is. 2 thumbs is the rainstorm.
Oh, that's right.
There's the thumb. He goes on to say, Pitt owns UPMC, University of Pitt Medical Center. If they can't support the athletic program, it's on them. I mean, like, I don't know the details of the setup with Pitt and UPMC. I'm pretty sure they're pretty separate, right? Like, Pitt and UPMC are not the same thing.
No.
But Homer Simpson is now Pitt and PSU fan, closes with the zinger. That's why I switch fan bases. So there you go. Homer Simpson, often with a lot of negativity, and is now switching fan bases. So there's that. This was a stat that came up. Donovan Reed says that Desmond Reed, perhaps a relation or not, has the highest grade for running backs in the ACC. I saw this stat. I want to bring it up. It was Pro Football Focus, right?
Yeah.
It was like the highest. Was it the most production for returning running back, or
highest graded returning?
Highest graded returning running back. Yeah, that's right. In the ACC, ahead of Omarion Hampton, Jaden Ott, Mark Fletcher Jr., Damian Martinez, Phil Maffa, Jamal Haynes, Kyle Robichaux, Jashawn Ward, and Jordan Waters. 89.1. I'd have to look back at a few of these guys. I mean, I think obviously the caveat here is that his returning production was at another school in another division. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's relevant. I saw that Bill Connolly, who does the S&P Plus, I think when he did his offseason rankings, when he was when he was doing percentage of returning production, and he was trying to figure out how to handle transfers, particularly transfers from like FCS level, I think he started taking them for 50%. And so, 1,000-yard rusher at the FCS level gets credit for 50%, or gets credit for 500 rushing yards returning production when they move up. I don't necessarily know if we should do that with Desmond Reed or not. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what he can do. I'm intrigued with any offensive guy who shows some signs of life. I like the running backs on this team. But I'm obviously like Gavin Bartholomew, but I'm intrigued with anybody who could potentially make plays for this offense, because they need playmakers. They need guys to make some, break some big plays. I was talking to a friend, and we both kind of agreed, like, if you give Desmond Reed a crease, he's going to make a big play. It's a question of what can he do on his own? What can he do if the blocking doesn't, Andre Powell used to say, like, we can block 10 guys, but there's that 11th guy that, you have to take care of. You, the running back, have to take care of that 11th guy. And so what Desmond Reed does with that 11th guy is what I'm curious to see. When that guy gets his hand on him, can Desmond Reed break tackles? Because I think Donovan would have to agree, like, he's not the biggest guy. And so that doesn't mean he can't break tackles. We've seen smaller guys break tackles, but it can be a little bit tougher when you're giving up that kind of weight difference. So I don't know about you. I think you've said before that you're intrigued by him. I'm intrigued, and I look forward. I think they'll put the ball in his hands. I think they'll give him opportunities, and I look forward to seeing what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think he got some pretty good reviews in spring ball. I think he kind of, obviously, with the comfort level of playing in this offense, he's going to naturally just kind of find a role because he kind of knows what he's doing. And I don't know how often Pitt's, under this offense, I guess we still need to see it. Just going to like line up and try to establish the run. I mean, I think they're going to try to do the whole tempo thing and throw the ball a lot. And he might fit into that because I think he could catch the ball out of the backfield. So again, it comes down to, making that step up. It's not just going FCS to Division I, it's going to Power 5 football. So we'll see how he can do. But I think it's spring ball. He showed enough that they're excited about him.
Yeah, they really are. It seems like Pat Narduzzi's really seems like he's fired up. He talked him up a lot in spring camp, and seems to be talking him up still now. After spring ended, talking up at the ACC meetings and whatnot. So Yeah, it'll be intriguing. I did want to ask you about Pitt baseball, Jim. I talked about it real quick at the top there. They lose to Wake Forest today. I think they finished the regular season 10-20 in the ACC, 26-28 now overall for the season. I mean, they'll have one more game. I guess Carolina tomorrow, assuming a loss, 26-29. That'll put Mike Bell at 57-98 overall. Or no. I'm sorry. Hold on. 133-47 overall in 6 seasons at Pitt, and 57 for ACC records. They probably count the ACC tournament games, right?
I'm not sure if they do.
That?
I'm not.
Well, he's 57-96 coming into the ACC tournament. He's already got one more conference loss and might end up with another one tomorrow. So, I mean, pretty well under. Pretty close to 40 games under 500 in ACC play. Something doesn't seem right about that. No, I guess that balances out. It's not good, though.
No.
Right? Like, that program just hasn't been successful. He's had one winning season. They went 29-27. I think they made the semifinals of the ACC tournament that year. They might have done that twice even.
I think just once under him.
Oh, okay. Giordano made it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's 6 years. You know, I know baseball doesn't command a lot of attention from the Pitt fan base. It's not going to come under fire if you have like 5 losing seasons in 6 years, the way a football coach or a men's basketball coach would. But you know, last year, I think we started seeing Heather Lyke make moves with some of the coaches she had hired. It was the first real sort of, you know, bloody season, off season for coaches she specifically had hired, which, I mean, she came in and hired a lot of coaches in those first like 18 to 24 months. And last offseason, she really started to have to cut some of those guys. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say, do you think Mike Bell is going to get fired? But, you know, there's kind of a 2-part question. Like, 1, how long do you give him? 2, what are realistic expectations for Pitt baseball in the ACC and in the sport as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, because going into today, I think Pitt was 8-4 in May. Like, they kind of did have a nice little stretch here. They did beat Florida State, a top 10 team, and you know they went down and took 2 out of 3 against Miami to put themselves in this position to make the tournament. So it was a nice little run. So I don't know if that's enough to save his job, but this is his 5th full season, because that one year I think they only played like 10 games.
COVID, yeah, right.
So I mean, it's going to be 3 out of 5 seasons with a losing record. I don't think Pitt's ever finished higher than 5th in the ACC Coastal. That's a 7-team division. The one year they probably should have made the tournament. I think that was also a COVID situation. They were in position to do it, then they kind of faded. But like, that was the only time Pitt was ever really close under Bell. And you know, now you're talking about season 5, and I look, it seems like they never really develop young talent. They have freshmen, and all of a sudden they're not there the next year. Then it's a transfer coming in. So you're kind of spinning in circles here, and you're not really going anywhere. I mean, you're still kind of ending up in that same spot, and you don't really have a lot of young guys to show for it. So, I mean, I think when Pitt's going to be successful at baseball, you look back a couple of years ago when they have, you know, guys like Sky Duff and, you know, like older guys, Kyle Hess and Popa. And that's how Pitt's going to be successful. They're going to have a core of guys to kind of grow up together. And there's just been a lot of roster movement the past few years, and they haven't been able to get that. So as for a realistic expectation, they should be able to make the tournament more than, I think the last one was 1995. I think a little more frequently than that. I think Northern baseball teams are a little bit at a disadvantage, but you see other teams able to pull it off. I mean, Boston College isn't this bad every year. They've made the tournament a few times. So I think Pitt should be able to get to that point. I just don't know what gets them there.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned the last 2 series, the Florida State and Miami series, they won 2 out of 3, but like the previous like 8 series, they won 6 games, you know, against ACC opponents. You know what I mean? They lost every series. They got swept twice. It's just rough. You know, it's just not good. But there is like, I mean, like you're right about Boston College, but like, I don't know. I just think there's a real question about what you can achieve north of the Mason-Dixon line. And then, you know, you start talking about what this might look like over the next couple of years, where they raise the scholarship limits, where they say you can have 35 full scholarship players I mean, Pitt's not going to be able to support that, right? Pitt's not going to be able to fully fund 35 or 40 or whatever the limit's going to be scholarship baseball players because they're moving away from the equivalency scholarships, no more half scholarships, full scholarships, 30 or 40 or 35 or however many it ends up being. Like, Pitt can't do that. And I don't think it would be a useful, a good way to use funds. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not sure. I mean, is it worth it? Like, what can they how far can they realistically get, even if they go so far as to fully fund it, which they probably won't. And then I think they could fully fund it and still probably end up being right around where they are now, or just commit to like 20 full scholarship guys and end up where they are right now, or worse.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
You're probably right in that regard. And I mean, it's interesting because, like, I mean, it's an hour south, and like West Virginia is a half decent baseball program. I mean, their best players from Pittsburgh too. So I mean, I don't know what the answer is to that, but I don't know. There's never been a good answer to it, and it really should have never been this bad all these years. I mean, you should be able to make the tournament like once a decade. You know, it shouldn't be this to this point. So I don't know, but I don't know if they make a move on Bell this offseason. But judging by last offseason, like you said, whenever Heather Lake finally started making some moves, like he was hired alongside all those guys that got fired. I mean, like Lance White, Mike Bell were pretty much hired a couple weeks apart. So
yeah,
we'll see.
That was when it was like every hire is going to be, a Florida State assistant. Is what it came down to, because it was those two guys. And that was, I mean, right around the time of Capel. And it was like, oh, she's just going to hire all like top ACC assistants from programs that have had success, which seemed like a good idea at the time, but hasn't exactly panned out. Let's see what's going on in the comments. People are arguing with Homer Simpson, who is now a Penn State fan. That's still weird. Let's see. John Kristovich, most optimistic Pitt fan as there is, says Pitt's going to finish 9-3 this season. I can't go so far as to say bullish on this team, or even all that optimistic, but I don't know. I like this. The schedule just, and we talked about it last week when we talked about the over/under on 5.5 wins. I just, they do miss Cam Ward, at Miami. They miss Grayson McCall at NC State. They miss DJU at Florida State. They miss Haynes King. They miss most of the good quarterbacks in the conference. Their schedule's not that bad. They shouldn't have a complete disaster at quarterback. I don't know if I'll go to 9-3, like John says, but coming around to 7-8 wins. I think, is that where you were last week? Were you 7 or 8?
I'm about 6-6, 7-5, but I mean, it still comes down to quarterback play. And we talked about it last week. We'll probably talk about it next week. But I mean, whenever you watch some of those games where they lost, there wasn't like a great, like huge talent deficiency lining up one team to another. It was just like, okay, they probably have a better quarterback. But like when Pitt beat Louisville, it's not like they were doing anything crazy. Like they all recruit the same guys. Like Pitt and Louisville go up against each other a lot. So it was an upset, yes, but at the same time, it wasn't like they beat, the 2001 Miami Hurricanes when they beat Louisville this year. I mean, so like they're close to a lot of the ACC teams. They're close to the middle of the pack. It's just getting better quarterback play.
Yeah, and by better quarterback play, we mean not
terrible
abominations. 22 ACC quarterbacks dropped back at least 70 times last season. Jim, do you know which one was number one in the conference in NFL passer rating?
Christian Fair.
Nathan Shane Yarnell. Do you know which one was number one in yards per attempt? I don't know if his middle name is Shane, but Kenny's middle name was Shane. So,
sounded good. I guess
Nathan Kenneth Yarnell. I found all these stats that, like, again, very small sample size, but like Yarnell is like top 5, top 6, top 7 in all these categories on Pro Football Focus among quarterbacks with at least 70 dropbacks. So I guess I'm getting on board the Nate Yarnell hype train. I'm going to write about the quarterbacks next week. I'm going to write about Yarnell in the 3-2-1 column on Friday. I'm going to do all those things, and I guess I'm going to start driving the Nate Yarnell hype train. Are you on board, or are you waiting for the Holstein diesel to pull into the station?
No, I think I'm behind the Yarnell hype. I thought he was good enough at the end of last season that there's enough to, I don't know, get some preseason hype going for our readers. Maybe not a national Heisman campaign, but I think we could sell this to the Panther-Lair contingent.
I'm gonna work like crazy to do so. I believe we can do it. All right, Jim, you have any other gestures or graphics you wanna show?
What was it again?
That one's the lasers. This is the fireworks. Yeah, you got lasers.
This was string cheese
fireworks
last night.
That was, yeah, it probably was. I can imagine. Those guys get crazy. Thanks, everybody who tuned in, though. We appreciate everybody in the comment section, except for Homer Simpson, who's a Penn State fan now. Well, thank you anyway for watching, I suppose. But also, shout out to Backshore. BackshoreApparel.com is the website. Pitt10 is the promo code. PITT10. Get 10% off your order of a really sweet hat. Like really nice tech hoodies, perfect gear that you need for the beach. We're going to be talking about it a lot, and you should definitely go check it out. But thanks, everybody who tuned in tonight. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. And thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back with another Morning Pitt, talking about everything going on with Pitt tomorrow, and then the mailbag on Friday, and all those things that we do. So thanks again, Jim. Thanks to you, and we will catch up with you guys next week.